that we provide a safe place to be able to communicate honestly and openly and without punishment, right? So
Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Today in the house, we have Tammy Tantilla. She is a relationship coach. Also, she is a personal and business coach. She has 28 years of experience training different levels of leaders and developing their skills and life distinctions. She is a master leader for Robbins Research International, and it is an honor to have you here. Welcome.
thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You are so welcome. So let's start with our first question. What are the simple habits that keep that connection, in a strong relationship?
That is a great question, because we definitely want to make sure that we set ourselves up to win when it comes to our relationships. So I think one of the key things is communication. So where relationships have a challenge is communication. And so what we want to make sure stays strong is we create great habits around our relationship, our communication and our relationship. We want to make sure that we provide a safe place to be able to communicate honestly and openly and without punishment, right? So it's like we want to be able to like that. So when we feel judged and we feel like it's not safe to communicate, we kind of stop doing that. So I want to make sure that communication, that channel stays really open all the time. And we want to be careful about making assumptions. So sometimes we assume that someone should be doing something or they should act a certain way and we don't always know what else is going on. So if we find ourselves making an assumption, we might want to just check in to see what else is going on. Because when we make an assumption and it doesn't come to fruition the way we think it should, then we can often take that personally, right? And now we're taking it personally, and now our feelings are hurt, and now we're communicating from a place of feeling hurt or upset, or we've given it a meaning that may not even be accurate. So we want to make sure that we're appreciating the other person's where they're at and whatever's going on for them, and like notice those kind of things. So another thing that we want to make sure that we have a habit of doing is making sure that we don't question the other person's intent. So what can happen is, well, let me ask, like your listeners, viewers, if they've ever had anyone question their intent, how does that feel? Like if you think about it, it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean that way. That makes you feel so bad. So when people feel that you've questioned their intent, it changes how they communicate and how they show up. So we want to make sure that we're not questioning their intention, just like we would want ours questioned. And so always just honor that they have a positive intention for what they're doing, because what that does is it allows us to ask different questions. It allows us to like come from a different place. Like if I assume that your intention is positive, then I'm going to come from a different place. I'm going to be like, oh, well, obviously they're doing something that's supposed to be supporting me or helping me or serving me. So I'm curious. So it comes from a more curious place rather than critical place. So the positive, really watching the positive intention makes a big difference. And then another big ritual, this can be a habit or ritual that can be really important, is to make sure that we stay in gratitude. So from gratitude, it's everywhere. And I think a ritual is acknowledging it more often. So here's an example I often use with people. So when people first get in a relationship, they're like, oh my gosh, you took the garbage out. Thank you. That's so thoughtful. I really appreciate that. And then, a year into the relationship, they're like, can you not smell that thing stinks? Are you ever going to get it out? Right? It's like we lose that sense of gratitude for the daily things that happen. It's thank you for this delicious meal, or thank you for taking the garbage out, or thank you for, it's like just coming from a place of gratitude. That ritual of gratitude can make a huge difference. And then I'm not sure if your viewers are aware of love languages. but there's an easy quiz to take on love languages, and you want to know what your partners, your kids, people that are important to you, you want to know what their love languages are, the ones that's most important to them, because we want to make a ritual that we're consciously making sure that we're aware of what their love language is and what have I done today to make sure that their love tank, I'll call it their love tank, right? So when our love language, like the things that's important, let me give you a quick example. If my partner's love language is acts of service, what have I done today to do something nice for them so they feel loved? Or maybe it's like they want to hear words of affirmation. So what have I said to say thank you or acknowledge something great that they've done? So the more that their love tank is filled, the different way that we communicate. We communicate differently when we're feeling full and grateful and appreciated and from that place than when we're not, when that's all depleted. So it's just like noticing where that might be, what that is, and then making sure that we're consistently filling up their love tank. And then just find ways to create habits of ways to be playful and fun, like create loving rituals like that you do on a regular basis, or playful, fun rituals that you do on a regular basis. When you do that consistently, it keeps that fun, fresh feeling in your relationship. And you're always like, what else can I do that's fun? Or how can I do this that makes this more fun? So I think creating those kind of rituals can really make a difference.
Thank you. That makes it so much simple. Like we can make our life so much simple if we adopt these habits. And I think the most important one that I'm rumbling in my head is that they come with like their actions, they have a positive intent, right? Whereas like instead of taking it personal, it's like, oh, it has a positive intent for our significant other or my kids or anybody in our family, every relationship. Instead of taking it personal, it's like, okay, maybe he was tired, or maybe he's not having a good day, or maybe she doesn't feel good and that's why she's whiny today. So that is so important to, first of all, like in my personal opinion, is like, okay, to be aware that it is a positive action, whatever they're doing right now, and be aware of like, okay, why? Understand kind of like where they're coming from versus just judging them for what they just did or what they didn't do, like taking the trash out.
Well, like right with what you're saying is, it's like if we, so I believe that people are not their behaviors. Like we've all done things where like, I don't know why I did that. Holy crap, what was going on? So we all do things that are like not consistent with who we really are. So I think that helps me not question people's intent, because I know I've also done things that are not who I am. So if I look at the behavior and I go, that's the behavior, but who is this person really? Right, then it's easy to get back to the positive intent.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It is beautiful. And then, the playfulness, and then having the habit of knowing what their love language is and having the clear communication, where it's like, did you mean this? Versus, making the assumption that, oh, he's just, being a jerk, or, he's just being a brat, or, okay. Yes, that's beautiful. What are the signs we need to look for in a relationship that is fading?
So that's a really great question. And I often go back to the 4 R's that John Gray or Barbara DeAngelis, whomever, came up with, because I think it's really key for us to notice. So if you feel like your relationship's starting to fade, then look at these 4 R's and notice where you're at in the process. And there's a way to like work through this. It's just like noticing where you are first is a great place, and catching it sooner than later is great. So let me just share the 4 R's with you real quickly so you'll know what that is. So the first one is resistance. It's when we start to have a resistance about something that our partner says or does, or how they feel. You start to sense a sense of resistance. And the second one is resentment. So resentment is just a more active sense of resistance. It has a little bit of anger and tension to it. So you start to notice that like things that the first one is like, things that they did in the beginning that was really cute and funny don't feel so cute and funny anymore. That's kind of that resistance, right? The resentment part is when it starts to irritate you, and you start to like, okay, that's not funny. I need you to do this, right? You start to feel this like, okay, I'm not gonna, that's not okay anymore. Kind of get to that place. You start to have a little bit of that anger and tension with it. So that's the second one, the second R. So resistance, resentment. The third one is rejection. So rejection's when we're like, we have had so much resentment that now we can't like tolerate that anymore. And we start to switch off emotionally and sexually. We start to just shut off and shut down with those. And we start to, because we disagree about everything, now it feels like, in our minds, it feels like we're disagreeing about everything. So we start to just avoid each other. We just don't spend a lot of time there because it just feels like there's going to be another argument. So resistance, resentment, rejection. The fourth one is repression. And this is the most dangerous one of the four. So it's when we get tired of the rejection, we're tired of that rejection, we start to repress our negative emotions. We just keep them inside just to keep peace in the relationship. You just want to have peace. You're tired of all the fighting. You're tired of all the other stuff. You just like start to repress things. And the reason that this is so dangerous is because we go to emotional numbness. We start to become more numb to things. And the challenge with that is that starts to spill over into all the other areas of our life. Because we shut down in this one place, we start to get like shut down and numb. So it's like noticing where we're at on those 4 R's. And then the way to like handle that is to start to have open and honest communication. When we can communicate, go back to starting to communicate more openly and honestly and without the emotion. So I know sometimes that's hard to do because we're triggered with what else has been going on. It's like, okay, like I'm so irritated when you did this. Right? But it's a communication. It's about a dialogue where you're taking responsibility for your part. So you're not coming from a place of being the blamer. Like I'm going to blame you for this and I'm going to blame you for that. And it's your fault this and it's your fault that. It's not coming from there. But it's also not being the victim. Oh, you're right. It's all me. Yep. All me. Martyr, victim. You're right. Okay. I'm just going to say this is probably all me. Well, that's not honest and open communication. Right? So it's like taking responsibility for our part in how we got here. I want to take 100% responsibility that I did things that got us where we're at. And I want to own that piece and I want to make it better. So let's talk about how to get from where we are to where we really want to be. So that's how when you start to notice that it's fading, notice where you're at in the 4 R's, and then start to create that dialogue as soon as possible from a place of back to all the things we talked about in the last question that we were just talking about, from a positive intent. What if they weren't being malicious? What if they weren't just trying to be cruel and mean? Like, what if they, we loved them for a reason? We brought them into our lives for a reason. So what if they're still that great person? Is just like a lot of things have been triggering them to show up differently than we remember.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So that's what I would say. If you start to notice it's fading, catch it as soon as you can. Notice where you're at, catch it as soon as you can, and start going back up those levels of the R's to where you get to be back to joy and happiness.
Yes, like use those habits that you were talking about, clear communication. Know that there's always a positive intent in everybody's action. Playfulness, and then what are their love language? Yes. I need to rewatch this video and take notes for my own relationship. One of the things that Robbins Research International has taught me is that I'm here to love. I'm here to give. And it's like whenever sometimes we get busy and it turns into a transaction relationship where it's like I'm expecting more out of, my relationship from the other people. And I'm like, no. It's like, you're here to give, in a relationship, you're the giver, you love to make it, to enjoy it. And and sometimes we have to go back to strategies and techniques. That's why coaches are a blessing. And they remind us of, life gets busy, but there are strategies and there are techniques that can ground you down to better your relationships. So yes. Is it possible? Well, no. What is the most common denominator you have seen that affects relationships?
Well, that question can be taken either way. So I'm going to speak about the common denominators that are positive in relationships.
Okay, yes.
Right. So I'm going to start with what's positive, and then also notice what the denominators of what's not working. So what works that's really great in relationships are some of the things we've just talked about. There's a lot of gratitude, right? They're grateful for the things. There's thoughtfulness, and there's playfulness. There's a lot of playfulness and fun in the relationship. Those are the positive common denominators that I noticed around relationships that seems to be flourishing and going great, or just in that really great sweet spot. Those are the common denominators on that side. On the other side, when things are challenging, the things that I've noticed that are consistent as well is, so I talk about a thing called stacking. And the way I like to refer to it is like, if something happens that upsets us and we don't actually talk about it, it's like a pancake. Okay, so here's a pancake, and then something else happens and we also don't talk about it, and now we've got a second pancake. And we start to make this stack of pancakes, right? So sometimes when I'm starting to work with someone, I'm trying to figure out how tall this stack is, because I got all these things that have never been discussed, worked through, figured out, communicated. So one of the things that I've noticed is that they'll often have a large stack of things that have upset them, that have been not communicated, that haven't been talked about and resolved. So with that, there's a phrase that's called, don't let anything live in the land of the unspoken, or in the world of the unspoken, right? So if I'm not in a great place to communicate about it, then I need to take a break, step back, and kind of figure out, like, how do I want to communicate about this? And then come forward and speak to it, because what happens is it starts to lower the stack. And if I can't, and I need to bring it with emotion, then it comes back to all those first things we talked about, right? So if you come with blame and judgment and anger and all that, then it's going to have a different response from your partner, as opposed to, trying to get into your place of like, I really need to understand what's really going on here. Cause like I'm starting to stack all this stuff, and I don't want to stack. So one of the things I've noticed is that there is usually some kind of a stack of things that haven't been communicated. Another thing that I noticed is there's like some negative anchors. So what I mean by that is there's a certain tonality that a person uses. Oh, I know what that means. Oh, so that's where we're going, right? And it's like, what? I didn't say anything, right? And they've got this like tonality that they use that the other person, like, I'm listening to them, I don't hear it. I just think it's a conversation, right? But the other person is triggered by this tonality or that look they give them. Okay. Right. And so they start to look and listen for it. They're listening for the tonality. They're looking for the look. And that starts to create the challenge as well. And another thing that happens is that they don't interrupt those patterns when they happen. They don't come up with fun, playful ways to interrupt it when they're like, they start to go down that path. They haven't created powerful ways to interrupt when things don't go right. And there's a lot of usually blaming and not taking responsibility. I noticed that's another thing that's a common denominator. A lot of like, well, you did this and you did that, and they're not taking responsibility for their part and why their partner may have responded that way in the first place, or what else could be going on. So there's a little bit more criticalness than curious, right? So I find that those are kind of the common denominators that I find in relationships that are starting to have challenges. And just they're simple things to like deal with or handle or take care of. Once you're aware that that's the pattern or what you're doing.
Okay, that's beautiful, because we tend to break patterns with our children, right? Like we as parents, and that's a relationship we also have to nurture and make sure that we have a strong bond. But with our husbands, I guess, or our significant others, I guess we have to learn to to break those patterns whenever we don't want the intensity of the problem to go to a higher level. That's what you're teaching me. It's like learn to, come with a playful attitude to break the pattern. If I know he's going to an anger land, it's like, how can I come from a love place and break that pattern to nurture a relationship and fix the problem? Because I do it with my children.
And it's so funny because I appreciate you bring that up with your children versus our partner, right? Because it's like our children model their parents. So like you can do something with them, but when they see how their parents interact, that's how they learn how relationships are supposed to be. So whatever you're modeling for them, they're going to think that either that's exactly what they're going to model and do, or they're going to do exactly the opposite because it doesn't feel good. So they're going to try to do everything the opposite of what you did, but they're totally modeling us, and they're going to do that. So you're right. It's like that's like a really important example we want to set for them.
Yeah, thank you. Is it possible for us to regain polarity in a relationship, as a marriage, as a couple, or is there a way we can save, a relationship maybe with our parents or a sister, or is it possible? Have you seen it possible?
Well, let's talk about intimate relationship first, because what happens with polarity in an intimate relationship is often when there's a lack of polarity, it's often because they're both they're both either in feminine energy or they're both in masculine energy. And there's no polarity for that. So if you start to notice that there's a lack of polarity, it's like, notice where you've stepped. Like for myself, like, did I step into my masculine energy or am I in my feminine energy? Like, so what happens is, and I can appreciate why it happens, right? So like sometimes women will get frustrated. Like they'll start to get frustrated and they're like, they step into their masculine energy because things need to get done. And they justify it like, well, someone needs to get it done. Someone needs to do it. And so they step into their masculine energy and they come out with an energy that is okay in moments to get a project done, but they start to live there. Like maybe they bring it home from work, or they're in that mode so often of that, like get things done and that masculine energy piece, that they don't bring their feminine energy back to the house, back to their home, back to that environment. So they can absolutely do it. It's just looking and noticing where you're at. And for the feminine energy, it's great to set things up as a way for their partner to win, or for the masculine energy to win. And I don't mean win-lose. I mean a way to like have a win in the relationship, have a win in their life, like looking for ways for them to feel that sense of win. Because when the masculine energy feels hopeless, they start to shut down. When they start to shut down and they start to get to that place, sometimes what they'll do, because they feel kind of hopeless, is they move into what we call a pleaser. They try to do anything they can to please. And it just, for the feminine energy, that is not an attractive. It's like, yeah, they're in their masculine and their partner's in their feminine, but it's like this really weak, pleasing kind of feminine. And I don't want to mean that feminine's weak, because feminine is extremely powerful. But it's like a weak kind of energy that just makes there like not be any, it's like, I'll just do anything. I'll do anything to get this relationship back or to get you happy or whatever. So it's not setting them up in a way to win in their masculine energy, if that makes sense. So it's like trying to look for ways for it to be a win when there's a lack of polarity, right? Even in the feminine, for the masculine, a lot of times when women stay in their masculine too long is because they don't feel like it's safe to come back to their feminine. They don't feel like that's a safe place to return to go there and be in their feminine and just enjoy and like bring that light and joy that the feminine energy brings. And so, because there's just so much that needs to be done and they've got things that have got to happen and blah, 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 right? And so they kind of get back to that place and they don't relax into their feminine and bring such a light and a joy to the people around them. So it's just noticing if there's the lack of polarity in an intimate relationship is often people are stuck in an energy that's not their core energy, masculine or feminine, whichever one it is. They're kind of stuck in a different one and they spend too much time there, and it creates a lack of polarity for the relationship. So with other people in your life, like family, like you were saying, it's probably not so much a polarity thing. right? It's probably something else that's really going on, because we often refer to polarity around an intimate relationship. And I can appreciate that it feels like there's a resistance to it. But it's probably something else that's really going on. Some stacks of pancakes, right? Some things that haven't been resolved. It's not great communication. It's giving something a meaning that isn't serving the relationship. It's questioning their intent. It's like all those things that we talked about before, those apply to all relationships, right? When we do that with anybody, it creates a tension and a discord and a lack of connection.
Beautiful. But for some of you guys that don't understand feminine energy and masculine energy, the best way I can explain to you that a feminine energy is a 4-year-old girl, 3-year-old girl. They just laugh and they cry, and then they go back and they get up and they dance and they giggle and they're just happy. And that's our true nature as women. You know, like we should be more like those 3-year-old girls that are just happy to be alive. But because we grow up in a world that we need to be tough and we need to get things done and we need to achieve so many things, then somehow we tilt into the masculine energy to like get things done. But a masculine energy is a man that achieve, you know, a man that goes after and completes his goals. You know, that's kind of how I understand feminine and masculine. So in a relationship with our significant others, sometimes we come from work, like Tammy was saying, and we bring that masculine energy because we had so many projects to get done. And then we see our husband, and then there, you know, we don't match, our energies don't match, our attitudes don't match. So that's whenever we begin to have problems. So as women, it's so important for us to think of that 3-year-old, 4-year-old daughter or niece or anybody that you have in your life and observe their behavior. And that's what we need to adopt. We need to dance more and laugh more and take life less serious. Don't you agree, Tammy?
I do. I do. The feminine energy is so powerful, because I find sometimes that people think that feminine means weak or flighty or whatever, and it's extremely powerful. And one of the most powerful things that the feminine energy does is it brings lightness, whether it be a light energy or just light to a situation. Like the feminine energy is so powerful in the difference it can bring. It has a sense of love and nurture, but it also is bright, and it's a great place to be, and it's a great place to embrace.
Yes, we, as women, our limbic system and our brain is larger than a man, so we have more emotions to express. And yeah, it's like it is a beautiful. It's beautiful to be a woman, and we need to embrace that femininity, you know, in a way that we're happy and we're laughing and we're bringing that joy to the ones we love around us. So, thank you. Where can we find you? If there's anybody out here in any of our viewers, audience that wants to know more about you, where can we find you?
So it's easy to go to my website. So my website is tammytantilla.com. So it's TammyTantilla, tammytantilla.com. And when you go there, you can ask me a question. It's a place you can ask a question that I can answer for you, or you can sign up for like a discovery call, and we'll just have a quick little call, 15, 20 minutes, and discover where you're at and how I can best support you. My husband and I both do couples coaching. So often when we do coaching with a couple, we meet together, we meet separately, we come back together. So we have lots of fun, great ways to help people move to where they want to be.
Yeah, and she is amazing. I was at one of her trainings. It was just an hour training about a week ago, and just the question, can I please start all over again? Or can we please start all over again? She brought that story, so powerful question about the end of the Cold War. And then my husband and I were having some friction, and like just listening to her, oh, and I looked at him after he came back from work, and I thought, can we please start all over again? And then it truly shift our like this week's been great. But it's like it was because I sat on that call with her, and I listen to her advice. So it is, if we want to improve our relationship, we have to be constantly looking for that strategies that are so simple, simple to add into our life, and it improves our relationship. So I totally recommend you guys to to call Tammy and get on that discovery call for sure. Before we go, Tammy, what is an advice you could give us all to begin to create a brighter future with our relationships?
What a great question. Thank you. So I think there's a couple things. One I believe it's important for us to start intentionally creating opportunities to connect. So like set up a date night. Do it on a regular basis so that you have something to look forward to as a couple. So it's like, I know that and I have couples do different things. Sometimes it's my turn and now it's your turn, and they switch off every other time, and they create whatever kind of date they want, and it becomes like a fun thing that they get to look forward to. And one of the things that can be great about that is you just set up some guidelines to help make it go even better. So like no distractions. So unless it's intentional, you don't go to a place that has a TV and they're watching the game and they're not like really listening, or they're watching their phone and it's like, yeah, it's time to get back home. So it's like they set up some guidelines to make it an opportunity on these dates where they create magical memories. So if you go with the intent to create more memories, or sometimes it's just a place where we can have a conversation and figure out some things with us, kind of type thing. Or maybe it's a date that it's a whatever you want date. It's like the person gets to do whatever they want on that date. So it's like, maybe I say, I want to go to the spa and I want to do couples massage and I want to whatever, then it's my date. Like it's whatever I want for that date. So it's whatever you want dates. So I think that's one of the things that can be really helpful, is set something up that's on a consistent basis that allows you to have that to look forward to and work through whatever challenges. So maybe it keeps the pancake stack kind of lower. I think the second thing is to make sure we know what our partner's love language is and keep those love tanks full. Do it on a consistent basis. Like if it's not daily, at least at the end of the week, look and go, what things did I do this week that filled them up? And just have a time to check in with yourself to make sure that you're consistently doing that. Because it changes how you show up with each other. They feel very different and they show up differently. And the last thing I would say is invite gratitude into your life even more. Like I'm guessing you're probably grateful. I would say even more gratitude. Like look for places to be grateful and look for places to express that and acknowledge that. A great way to get started on that is to make a list every day of 10 different things that you're grateful for. And at the end of, say you do it for 10 days, you'll have 100 things that you're really grateful for. And I find that's really great for people who feel like they're kind of in a slump, or they're just kind of feeling discouraged. It's what helpful is when we change our focus to what we're grateful for. So I'd like to invite you to think about what you're grateful for, acknowledge it more, because there's so much to be grateful for, and it's all around you.
Yes, thank you so much. I hope you guys are finding a word, a phrase, an aha moment that you can adopt into your lives to begin to create a brighter future. I mean, if this is not costing you any money, strategies don't cost you money. You just have to apply them into your life and build them into your habits so that you can improve your life. Blessings to you all. Tammy, at the end of each interview, I ask my guests to high five. High five?
Yes.
High five.
Yes.
Take care.
Thank you.